Welcome. I'm Michael Diamond. I'm a clinical assistant professor in our Department of Integrated Marketing and Communications within the Division of Programs in Business at NYU School of Professional Studies. Hopefully, as many of you know, we have about 1,500 students studying across a variety of different educational programs. We have two very well received education graduate programs, one in marketing, one in PR. Plus, we have a number of very well subscribed certificate programs. And all of these students and emerging professionals are supported by a faculty of over 200 leading professionals and what I like to call reflective practitioners, who bring their wisdom and their real life, real time experiences to our classrooms. We're also genuinely a very diverse and global community, and we celebrate their opportunity to learn from each other broadly across cultures, across identities and experiences. So this provides even more reason to be delighted to welcome you all to this event this evening. It's taking place in the evening in New York and in the morning if you're joining us from China. It's also a real pleasure to reconnect with Paul Lin. He's a cherished colleague who's taught in our programs in integrated marketing for our graduate students in Shanghai, and he's an esteemed marketing professional and leader in his own right. And it's fair to say this series was his brainchild. His vision, which he shared with Bryce Whitwam and me, was to create a series of web-based conversations that help business leaders, academics, students of marketing and PR, especially in the US, to connect with the innovations, the innovators, and the lessons learned from the experience of marketing and the experience of business leaders in China. So in that context, it's an absolute delight to welcome Neil Nand. Paul will do the formal introductions, but I'm just happy to see the words creativity and technology come together in this discussion. Feels very timely and salient, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Just one piece of housekeeping. If you have questions for either of our speakers, please put them in the Q&A. The Q&A should be at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom screen. It's usually two sort of speech bubbles. The chat is not enabled, but Q&A is. So if you have any questions, and we'll work through them after Neil and Paul have done their more formal stuff. So without further ado, great pleasure to welcome you both.
Great, thank you, Michael. Welcome everyone. Good morning to everyone in Shanghai, and then good evening to everyone in New York. This is the third season that we're doing Lessons from China, and I couldn't have done it without Michael's support coming out of New York. But the whole genesis of this was really, it started during the pandemic when everyone was online and everyone was doing Zoom, but it was also a way to really showcase something that was unique and something that was interesting coming out of China, right? Without all the political baggage, without sort of all the controversy, it usually comes attached with that. So this is purely around business, focused on marketing and communications, because you read a lot about what's happening in China. And our whole thing with the series was try to give a little bit of insight in terms of what is really happening on the ground and what we can learn globally from all the technology that's coming out of here. All right. Today we have a really special guest. Neil is actually a very, very close friend of mine personally. I've known him for at least probably 5 or 6 years now. He is an esteemed sort of subject matter expert within a community that we have here in Shanghai and on WeChat, but also someone that is well-versed in creative and technology put together, and then with Metaverse, that's coming sort of the flavor of the month, so to speak, but he'll sort of give some insight on whether or not it has longevity. He is the Director of Creative Technology at Ogilvy Shanghai, which is probably one of the best agency and groups globally, and also here in China. And I wanted him to come in and really talk about something that is getting a lot of debate right now in the industry, and also give a little bit of texture to how it's different here in China because of the walled gardens, because of the internet that's happening here, and sort of get some insight in terms of how we could apply that to other markets and essentially, uncover that. All right. Neil is a lifelong proponent of human-machine interaction experiences. He probably started his career during the early 2000s, .com, when Flash and Macromedia were still around, and then he made his way, progressed in his career, now to a point now where he's doing work for global brands here in this market, but I know globally around the world as well. All right. So without further ado, Neil, welcome. The stage is yours.
Michael, and thank you for having me here, NYU. What Paul just said about starting with macro media and just reminded me of a moment when I was a kid. So when I was studying high school, and this new course was introduced of multimedia. So this was in 2000, and a new multimedia course was introduced as a trial in our schools. And I remember my parents telling me that, Neil, don't get too caught up on this. Make sure to focus on your studies. And I did really bad in my studies. I never went to university. And the only thing I really enjoyed doing was multimedia. And that's taken me to London, to Hong Kong, living in Finland, and when being here in Shanghai for 7 years, all without a university degree, all through multimedia and creativity. So it was quite a funny moment that I always reflect on when my parents are like, make sure you become a doctor or a lawyer. And here I am without all those things. Cool. So that kind of takes us, back in the day, we were doing all these animations through Macromedia Flash for bars and hotels, and then it kind of evolved into websites. And now we're at this interesting stage where we're calling this thing Metaverse. And I disagree that it's a fad. It gets planted as a fad, but I think it's a bit too early to judge. So let's step back a little bit. Storytelling. Ultimately, everything that we do, especially in communications, is storytelling, and it's in our human DNA. We started as cavemen, drawing stuff, telling stories by the fire, and then we progressed to radio, then TV, movies, and now we've just got new tools to do it. If we reflect on where we are now and compared to 22 years ago, the websites were sort of like this novelty thing, and then some of the brands sort of kind of went, hey, let's try this whole web experience thing out, and then the early adopters went online, and then we found 10 years later it became the thing. It became the most important thing to people's businesses. And the way the landscape looked like in 2010 was we had websites and we had these campaign sites on desktops. And then we started thinking, hey, there's an opportunity for digital banners and posts to start driving traffic to the websites. And then a few years later, about around 2015, we still had websites, campaigns, they evolved, banners evolved, but we started having applications. In China, they call them apps. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's a common term. So we started having native applications. And during that time, we started having touchscreen, easily accessible and affordable touchscreen computers. And then we started installing them inside retail activations and events. And I remember doing auto shows around China. And then we started, the new thing was all these digital activations inside these event spaces. And then, just recently, since the 2020s, we still have our websites, but our campaigns started becoming more 3D and immersive. We started using the tools, the new features that are available in our phones, the cameras, to be able to layer the real world with our digital world to tell this new kind of storytelling. We started, and gaming became more of where the foot traffic was heading as well. So brands started thinking, hey, maybe I should exist inside a video game. VR experiences became a bit more commonplace. And then now what we're seeing as well is all these new digital 3D out-of-home billboards, which is super cool. And so now if we just look at this whole line here with in the 2020 line, we have so many digital touch points, and they just kind of become this, in a way, a lonely, if you look at storytelling, I mean, this is the stage. And then, and before, prior to the last few years, it became, websites were just a place of information. But now it's more of a place of storytelling. And so that's where we have this all these new metaverse things, elements like virtual ambassadors starting to become an emotional way of connecting to digital content. You're seeing things like NFTs, so you can actually have the digital things you're engaging with. So yeah, very much this digital landscape that we've got, we're making it more human by bringing in things that exist in the real world and into the virtual space. And then the outlook for 2025, I doubt there's going to be a new medium at any point, but what is likely is that we'll see mass consumer AR, VR headsets. So disclaimer, the topic of metaverse, there's no distinct definition of what metaverse is, and I think I generally put it as anything that's an evolution of what was traditional internet. So traditional internet being 2D UX UI, button clicks, and things that you would have been experiencing in the last 5 years. And what I consider metaverse is involving a lot of newer features. So making your website a bit more 3D, so it's closer to the real world, using the camera, which kind of breaks that digital wall into the real world, augmented reality, imposing virtual characters or things over the top of the real world, leveraging AI to be able to read the real world and interpret it in a certain way, blockchain, which ultimately becomes NFTs, and cryptocurrencies, which allows us to own digital things that aren't physical, that we traditionally have in a keep sort of moment. Virtualized content, so things that existed in stories before, but seeing it in a new light, and virtual personalities, whether it's a completely fictitious personality, or if it's something, or it's a virtual twin of a real progress. So I think, yeah, so that's slight disclaimer, as in, the definition is a little bit hazy, but I think if we just broadly look at it like this, that's how we can consider metaverse. Now, metaverse in China and the West will grow differently, just inheritedly, because the digital landscape has always been different in China. In the West, we have Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all these kinds of things, and it has its own digital ecosystem. In China, because of policies, whatever, they never really existed here or took off. So China has created its own unique digital ecosystem with its own unique behavior, and that the same thing applies for metaverse concepts. Like one of the big ones is this virtual space where everyone can get together, which is a bit of a contentious issue in China. But where areas where it does become quite popular is digital assets in terms of art, or ownable things that are associated to a brand, and also virtual avatars where people do like content creation, but they do want the anonymity. So we're going to see the digital and then now metaverse evolve in its own unique ways. But let's have a broad look at what things are metaverse, and here's a mix of things that are in the West and things that are in China, and then I'll point out which ones are in China. So this one's a cool example of the Xbox Museum. If you go onto the site, you get to experience Xbox things, because it does come from a digital world. So all things Xbox past and present inside this virtual world that you can walk around and experience it as if you're playing the game. This next example is Virtual Expo Dubai. So in 2020, when the Dubai Expo was meant to happen, we obviously had the pandemic and people weren't really flying around, but the show must go on. So Dubai went on and made this whole fully virtual experience of what the expo would be. And the positives is that now it's accessible to anyone in the world, and they still have it on. It's a much lower cost, and so now they can have dual, like moving forward. I guess we're going to see expos having its virtual version, which can reach people at scale, and also the physical version for anyone that can actually attend the event. This example here on the right Nike. So Nike have these virtual characters inside their Tmall store. So Tmall is a shopping platform inside China. It's one of the popular ones. And so when you purchase things, you get points, and then through these points, you can go and redeem virtual clothing for your avatar. So now you've got this virtual avatar, which is kind of tied to a loyalty program, which is quite cool. So you've got your level 1 sort of clothing, but yeah, as you purchase more and more, your points loyalty grows, then you can go and spend it in cooler styles. This Snap example from the West. Now, this was a discussion that I was having with Nike a long time ago, when we were always thinking, what does the flagship store of the future look like? Especially in China, where we have a lot of reverse urbanization, meaning people are moving away from the tier 1 cities. We have city tiering in China, but like the tier 1 cities like Shanghai, Beijing, and moving towards the smaller cities. So do brands open up more physical stores in these other places, or do they double down on digital? And I thought this example from Snap, from Tommy Hilfiger and Snap, where they virtualized your home, was I think this kind of gives you a bit of a lens of what we'll be seeing coming more out of brands. National Geographic telling their Mount Everest stories in new and unique ways. So instead of pressing buttons to move around, you anchor the content to the ground, as they're doing here, and then you can navigate simply by moving your device around. And the other big thing is virtual spaces, and these are not owned by brands, but they are places that brands exist in. And so here's the ones that are in the West for our viewers in China. So Roblox, so Gucci launched Gucci Town in Roblox, and then Givenchy followed suit and created these spaces that embody the brand inside these always on virtual worlds. And then other brands have taken a bit further, where you, like Hyundai, they exist on Roblox, where you can have your car and then drive around their future mobility city and learn about Hyundai's mobility values. And this one was a big one when Nike launched Nike Land on Roblox. So it was just always available Nike store or Nike experience that they can have accessible all around the world, because Nike have the same brand all around the world. So it just makes sense in this whole in this Roblox area that they create a virtual version of it, and they can do things that aren't limited to real world physics. Again, Gucci, luxury seems to be a pioneer in this virtual space. They're creating the storytelling in all kinds of different places. So this is where they've launched Gucci Vault, where you can find exclusive virtual clothing. And then Snoop Dogg's gone ahead and made a music video using the sandbox themes. And obviously we've got Fortnite, where Travis Scott made headlines by launching his concert inside a very popular game in the West, Fortnite. And Armani's gone and made ads inside inside Fortnite itself. And we've got big players like Jimmy Fallon creating experiences there. So now let's have a look at China. So I wanted to share this just to show you guys the difference between these virtual spaces in the West and China. So it is a little bit different, but people are doing things. So Adidas launched their did a campaign inside one of the Tencent. So Tencent is one of the big tech players in China, and they have a virtual property called or event space called TME Land, and brands can go create experiences in there. So the one on the top right is Adidas, and then on the bottom left is Coca-Cola's experience. And then so it's just a place where people can hang out and experience things, all things virtual and on brand. And just keep in mind that we're only at the start of the story. When as I shared earlier, is when the internet first came out, we didn't judge it because it was invisible. It just so happens that we're at an evolution point of the web, and now we're very quick to judge. So just keep in mind that we are at the very start of the metaverse, and brands are doing things, and which is great, and they can come in with a PR headline of they were the first. So from a storytelling or advertising perspective, they can come in and say they were the first, and they can get their teams familiar with it. And so now they have a stepping stone to evolve from. Then other brands can learn from this as well and come in a little bit later, but they can't do what the first person has done. They have to be able to always build upon that very first experience that the pioneer has set. How it's Metaverse, how it's used inside storytelling. I really like or if you look at Balenciaga content, now they do a lot of this storytelling with their whole sensationalized, virtualized characters. So they show real world experiences, but they take it up a notch of like, playing with fire and mixing things around. So they do these unique fashion shows using Metaverse content. Volvo and Durex did a pretty interesting campaign using virtual characters about safety, being Durex, but also Volvo being known as a very safe car and about safety in the digital world. This one is a ad in China for a plum iced tea. And what they've done is this actual video is a virtualization. The CGI is a virtualization of a very famous artwork in China called 1,000 Li of Rivers and Mountains. So I think our Chinese audience, some of them might be familiar with this. And I think this was around 1000 AD or something. It was a very well-known piece of art. And now what we're seeing is brands looking towards the past to use technology to not make it interesting, but realize it in a new way. So every time when we talk about virtual and digital, we always think futuristic, but we can actually do we can bring to life things from the past that will be connected to our grandparents and bring it into modern times to get them to realize it in a new ephemeral way. So I thought that's quite exciting. These two campaigns are pretty cool. So the one on the right is Mercedes. So Mercedes-Benz is named after the founder's daughter, Mercedes. And funnily enough, now we're launching the virtual ambassador for Mercedes as Ogilvy. Her name is Mercedes, and so she showcases cars now. And I think they've got some interesting, I'm not sure if I can say this, but they've got some super cool offline experiences with this virtual human that was launched just recently. On the left is Shell. So they did something interesting with mechanics. Now in China, mechanics are kind of seen, unfortunately, as a lower class citizen. So they're kind of seen as not very intelligent, not good looking, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. So Shell wanted to kind of reverse that image, and by kind of creating like a hero mechanic. So his name is mechanic number one. He's good looking. He's got these little glasses that gives him special insight. So now he's sort of the pinup boy for mechanics in China. So I thought that was quite a nice one. Here are some other ones that we've launched as Ogilvy. On the right is her name is Guyu. So it's a Meta child. I think might be one of the first Meta childs launched. But we use her as a sort of like as a bridge to connect our younger audience because they're not going to use a website. It's boring. And now, especially with a lot of voice activated interpersonal applications like smart speakers, we have in China, we have Xiaoyu, Xiaodu, and we have Tmall Genie in the West. You have Alexa and Siri. But now brands are building upon that, and they're creating characters that connect to our audience in a different way. And on the left is another meta-human that his name's Limex, that we launched for Snow Beer. Now, Snow Beer, the target audience is a younger audience who are gamers. So we created a character that is in line with characters that our audience will be familiar with, and we can use them inside these properties as well as tell stories in other platforms. Qatar Airways introduced a meta-human to be the representative of their first and business classes. So when you go book spaces inside their website, you're being greeted and shown around by this virtual human, which is interesting. And then and back where I was saying, like, now we have these new sort of platforms, these 3D out of home experiences and brands. So here we see Adidas, where their virtual characters and styles can co-live in a more near blended way. So we're seeing these, we're getting into the economics of creativity now, because back in the traditional internet world, 2D images, I mean, you can take a screenshot or whatever, it's much easier to mock up things, but 3D creativity is a lot more taxing. You need to have the rig of that actual body, then you've got expression, so the face is quite something hard to control, and then how is this person animated as well? Are they being mapped by a human? So it can get quite taxing. So what we're seeing now is that as creativity evolves, we're finding these 3D assets being created, and they're now being used in different mediums. So one, it becomes this continuous storytelling a method, but it also becomes cost effective if we keep reusing those assets. And they're becoming much easier to create. So this is the Unreal Engine MetaHuman Creator creates near lifelike faces. So none of these people here you're seeing are real. You can freely download these tools on Unreal Engine. You can definitely. MetaHuman Creator, I'm not sure if there's a small fee or not, but yeah, I think if you have time, download and give it a play around and start creating some virtual humans and see what you can do with it. Here's me playing around with another one called Ready Player Me. I'm using another tool called Kinetics, where I create my model, and then if you see me on the top right, I'm moving my hand, and it's just tracking me. And then I go into a 3D tool called Blender, and they're great for when I go do pitches or storytelling. If I want to mock up things, I actually make virtual versions of the CMO or CEO and find videos of them and on YouTube, and then I run those videos through this Kinetics tool that kind of gets their animatronics, and then I blend it with the virtual character that I've generated. It all takes me maybe about an hour, and then so now I've got this character, a virtualized version of the CEO or CMO, and you having the exact same motions of them from one of their YouTube clips, so it usually impresses them. So yeah, new ways of doing things, which is quite exciting. Let's chat blockchain NFTs in the West. I'm sure our American audience are very familiar with OpenSea, where people go and trade and do all kinds of things with NFTs. In China, exchanging it for currency is banned, and it's an illegal practice. But it doesn't have to always be about money. Like you can see over here, what if you follow Coke and their NFTs, what they do is that every time they do a campaign, they have an NFT version of the campaign that people can own, which is quite exciting. So the middle one, I actually bought this NFT because I thought it was quite cool. They have Coke and Burger Day. I mean, so when you get it from Coke, you have to do a task to attain it, but users go and attain it very quickly. So, and I don't want to spend the time of doing that task, but then I'll go find it on OpenSea, and then I'll just go buy it for $20. And then and yeah, it's quite a cool memory of the campaign that you were fond of, because you're going to eat the Coke and burger, but then this way I would drink the Coke, but this way you get to keep it and have this memory, and when you look back in your wallet, it's there. So yeah, I quite like what Coke do. So onto China on NFTs. What's interesting is that in the West, when you sign up for a wallet, it's quite a bit of hassle of authenticating yourself and downloading this and setting up your network and all kinds of things, because it's on the public blockchain. In China, public blockchains are illegal, but private blockchains are acceptable, and that's what Chinese tech giants like Tencent, Alibaba, JD, they've all created their own blockchains. And because everyone essentially has Alibaba apps and Tencent apps, it's just one click away. So you can go inside mini programs inside Alibaba or Tencent and look at your wallet. As soon as you just sign in with your phone number, everything is already there. So the step of attaining a NFT wallet in China is much faster, and you could probably argue that there's more wallet users in China than the rest of the world, just because of the ease of access. Because in the West, it's mostly in the niche tech communities that are making a lot of noise, so everyone thinks like, oh wow, it's so popular. But we're actually using it for brands. So this one, what you see on the left is a project that we did as Ogilvy for our client Coca-Cola. This was Year of the Tiger. We're about to go into Year of the Rabbit, but Year of the Tiger was it was the beginning of this year's campaign. And so we had these exclusive gift packs, these physical gift packs that people can buy. But to make it extra exclusive, we had it so people can have the chance of getting the Tiger Red packet as well, the collectible. So you have this exclusive physical gift pack, and then you have the virtual one, and then makes that whole product even more exclusive. And it rose up the to be able to get it, you have to be a VIP member. So so it's easy for people to do. And I think we saw results of like it's quite high that we had a lot more VIP users during this period. On the right, we have a very famous Chinese virtual KOL. Her name is Ayayi, and she's done ads for Porsche and other brands, L'Oreal. But over here, she's doing something for Burberry, where she's promoting this virtual toy that you can see her holding that gets sold with a scarf. And this was sold in minutes. And so that's 2,900 RMB, so Chinese yuan. And I think that translates to about maybe 400 US. So it's not a cheap item. So yeah, what we're seeing is that it's virtual NFTs for brands are always combined with the physical product, and then the payment is in the physical product, but they get the virtual collectible with it. So what is all these things I've showed you? What does it mean for brands? So if we traditionally look at how our ecosystem looks like, what we're doing is that we launch campaigns, we have our social channels, e-commerce channels and verticals to ultimately drive people to our offline retail space or the private home, whether it's an application or it's a web. And then we either recruit them as a user, or we make a sale or a service or whatever. And so that's what the landscape looks like. But now with this whole metaverse, we have a whole sleuth of new tools to be able to go and create content, tell stories, and new ways of engagement through your avatars, of styling the person, as we saw with Nike, and then the ownable NFTs that we saw with Coke, and then being presented by celebrities that are from the virtual space. So I just wanted to wrap it up. I think, yeah, for time, some of the campaigns that we've been doing in China. So we're removing the touch from the experiences and having things, you're using your gyroscope and you're scanning question marks with your camera. And this was our summer campaign, doing like a sort of Guitar Hero, but with completely virtual characters. And the way this one works is if I go play the game and then I go share with Paul, when Paul plays the game, I'm going to be one of the faces in his background. Now, Paul goes shares with Michael, then me and Paul are going to be in the background of Paul's experience. So it's kind of using blockchain style methodology, but inside a game, just to make that experience, what is it called, like degrees of separation. We're using degrees of separation to really bring out these campaigns to life. This is part one of, if this talk was 1 week later, I'd be able to show you what we've done with this recently. Is we're about to launch the phase 2 of Coke's augmented reality gift boxes. So now all of Coke's gift boxes are augmented reality, and we have some really interesting storytelling, and we have very interesting technical elements. And I think it's launching tomorrow. I've seen it, so cool. Yeah. Maybe Paul can circulate it next week when we can make it fully public. So some of the other things we'll be doing is when blockchain NFTs kind of came out and was really popular. One of our clients, Audi, and so instead of spending so much money on your traditional TV ads, Audi's audience is generally tech-centric. So we launched it as a NFT campaign, and it won a ROI award just recently, return on investment. I think it was a bronze or something like that. And so from a very small budget, using the niche tech community, which is in line with our Audi consumer base, we launched the Audi Q5 e-tron NFTs, which created a buzz amongst our tech-centric audience. And then, since we're doing NFTs, we had our DO Day, David Ogilvy Day, which is the company I work for. And we launched these David Ogilvy NFTs inside China and the West. So we partnered up with Tencent to create these NFTs, which is inside our company mini programs that show that, hey, because you attended David Ogilvy Day, you get this NFT. And then our audience in the West, they have it, we shared it all, the same creativity through OpenSea. So I'd like to wrap it up with this quote that I always turn to from Justin Trudeau, obviously the Prime Minister of Canada, what he said at Davos 2018: "The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again." And I think that takes it to, I understand many of you are students, and I think this kind of takes it the next steps. This is where you guys come in and take what you see happening now, and take it to the next level. And don't fear that people have more experience, because what they also have is a lot of operational debt. They have the old ways of behavior, and because as Justin Trudeau said, is the pace of change. Things are changing, and you're having the opportunity to learn things the new way. So these old, the people that are already in the market, they're playing by yesterday's rules, and you're playing by the rules of tomorrow. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time to be able to leverage this whole metaverse, well, things that are happening around the technologies, and why you should love it and why it'll help you. And that wraps up my talk. I think maybe I'm quite over, but yeah, shall we answer some questions?
Yeah, no, that was really good, Neil. Thank you very much. Beautiful slides there. Great work. It was really good to see some of the campaigns that are current, that are relevant, that you are doing, that you and Ogilvy are doing for big brands. Can you talk a little bit? You talked about, you had one slide on ecosystem, right? And this is always, one of the main topics for our session is around just the differences between China and the West, right? There's a lot more integrated ecosystems here. There's obviously some fragmentation that's starting to happen here with different platforms, but payment integrated into social, integrated into services and utility platform, all within one application, which is WeChat here, which is a lot more fragmented in the West. Does that mean that metaverse and the whole concept of metaverse will grow faster here? Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of just growth, right? You started it off by saying they're going to look different because the platforms are different. But is it really just that the platforms are different, but they're going to build the same thing within those platforms? Or do you predict that the behavior will be different and the way that we as humans interact with them will be different?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing it in traditional and digital. I would say every time I go back to Australia, I think, oh my God, how am I going to survive here? Because things are going much slower. I mean, it's calmer, it's nicer. It's just so I'm so conditioned for China's pace that even from payment methods, I don't carry a wallet around. The whole concept of a wallet, I threw that out I don't know, years ago, and I'm like, oh, I have to remember to carry a wallet when I go outside of China. So yeah, I think we've already seen acceleration and adoption. And I think that's the biggest thing about China is not only the acceleration and it's the adoption. I think we could say that like there are definitely advanced cities around the world, but I think it works in concentrations where either like Sydney or like San Francisco or London, but it doesn't distribute out at mass adoption scale the same way as China does. And I think that's the interesting contrast from China and the West, is that yes, I think you would say individually, the West is accelerating more. But if you look at it at mass scale, I think you could say that China is accelerating more. But then as that cycle continues, you've got more users of it. So it kind of creates this situation where you can go further. And the whole thing of NFTs, I think the whole governing, we're seeing it right now with and the whole blockchain and the money side of things with the whole FTX, where people dropped a lot of money inside this ungoverned body, and we're seeing dramas unfold. And then over here, it's somehow, it just doesn't exist just because it wasn't allowed. But it's created it to becoming this thing that you just use purely for creativity. So us as creatives, we look at it from a different lens as those from a crypto bro, for example. So if we're looking at from a brand's perspective, I think it's growing more and faster. Like whenever we talk to brands, we always think about how do we turn this into something that could be a utility. And at the start, NFTs were more of a buzz. But now it's kind of like simmered down, and now we're seeing it of like, okay, cool, this is probably a part 2 strategy. So it's in consideration, but not right now. So right now we're working with brands to virtualize, to take their websites to or mini programs and apps to the next level, to create a using AR or the things that you see with Coca-Cola. To create a cooler experience, and then you're rewarded. Like the second part is the reward as the NFT, and that was the Fanta example. So on Bilibili is like kind of like a Chinese YouTube, and then content creators, their avatars are NFTs, and so by playing this game inside the Fanta experience, then you get rewarded with the Bilibili NFT. So yeah, I think we're seeing like big brands doing cool stuff with it. Yeah, whether it's going to be faster here or there, I don't know. It's going to be definitely different. But this, anything that's in a smaller niche environment tends to go faster.
Okay. No, it's really good. It's very interesting what's sort of happening right now within those markets. Let me take a question from the audience, all right? This one person has said, would you say that the incorporation of Metaverse couldn't live without in-person interaction of brand and consumers? So like everything in the Metaverse has to be linked to physical products or events to become meaningful. Would there be a natural drawback that would limit the development of the Metaverse, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually, I thought about putting this point in, but it slipped my mind. So I'm glad this question was asked. And so the human factor, because we are going to the virtual spaces, we're becoming more, we're getting further away from humanity, those kinds of experiences. So then this is the whole value of real world things being injected into the this virtual space becomes ever more important. So everything that we do that's virtual, we always think about, okay, what is the real world human value or component, whether it's just something emotional, like we saw with with that artwork. So that artwork means a lot to older Chinese artists or people that are familiar with old Chinese art, but then them now seeing their kids see that art transformed in a way that the kids can enjoy and see it in their sort of language, which is a lot more faster, a lot more CGI and closer to reality. So I mean, yeah, I guess that question, like that human factor, it's how you it's how it's connected to the real world. So it could be through storytelling with NFTs. NFTs can be purchased individually in China, can be purchased individually in China, but it cannot be resold on an exchange. So that first sale can be virtual, but then if it doesn't have resale value, then the initial value is quite hard. So unless it's very amazing art or something like that, and we see people buy it, and there are applications for it, but for brands specifically, it's because that's not their core business. It will always be associated to a real world product, and I think, and because we're at the first iteration, we've seen these characters, these virtual characters, come alive as well. Now they're completely fictitious, like as if they're Darth Vader or something like that. But they've got no backstory. And what we're seeing now is that now people have realized, like, you know, they've moved really quickly to the market, and they've gone, okay, things are not working because we're missing the backstory, we're missing that emotional connection, or we need a real world person. So I think we're going to see a lot of development in this space, and it will be very much connected to real world, either emotionally, storytelling, or actual physical real world products.
Okay, great. You know, people are asking what sort of businesses or opportunities for students to start in what, you know, what they call Web3 or the Metaverse, right? A lot of the examples you showed were multinationals, like big brands, big budgets. It feels like the barrier of entry becomes really hard if you're an entrepreneur, right? Can you talk a little bit about what sort of space you're seeing, or what sort of opportunities you're seeing with people that, you know, do not work at big brands, do not have necessarily the big budgets to do a lot of the special effects or do a lot of the work, right? That you see within the space, right? Because that's when you get a sense of, like, there's a movement that's happening where other people are getting involved. Either it's a small business, it's an entrepreneur, it's young people that have an idea but don't necessarily have the resources or the funds to be able to make that happen. What are you sort of seeing in that space, Neil?
So with these big multinationals, I mean, my role is to kind of create that whole innovation, like do cool stuff and break new ground. That's a really great question. So if you were to kind of get started, I think smaller businesses, if they need to button up first and kind of get their traditional web sort of done first. But if they can leverage any of these metaverse things, then there are definitely tools out there that will allow you to do things faster, like Ready Player Me. If you just Google that one, that's a great one that you can already, it's like that example I showed you, that's already a 3D avatar creation tool that you can already get started and start doing things. Unreal Engine. There's so many tutorials out there. I never went to university. I just started playing around with this kind of stuff. I learned everything off YouTube. And I can do After Effects now, Premiere, Blender, all kinds of things, just because all those resources are easily available on the internet, and those tools have matured in a way that it's a lot easier for entry levels to get involved in. And so in some ways it's harder and easier, because I think the learning steps are much easier to do. And so, as I said, you don't have that operational debt. So there are definitely tools out there that people can kind of get involved in. A recent example I saw, which I thought was absolutely amazing, was the Chinese fashion show this year from students. So student fashion designers. They did something really amazing. Maybe it'll take me some time to pull it up. But Chinese fashion designers, they did all their fashion designs, and when they design fashion now, it's all done in 3D. And they just used this. They created. I think someone created this one virtual model, which was silver, and then everyone just layered clothing and they just duplicated it. So you've got 50 instances of this virtual person. And then the fashion designers, they just layered their fashion designs over this virtual model. And now, so for their industry, now in the previous world, it's going to be much harder to create a runway fashion show. But through modern technology and the metaverse, it makes a lot of sense now to do your fashion show with virtual characters, because one, hiring that talent that's going to display your clothing best is going to be a bit hard. So yeah, I thought that was a great example. And I think we're seeing more use case scenarios of 3D, and 3D is becoming a lot more accessible, just because all the tools are definitely free. It's just I think there's just an inherent fear that they need to be taught something. So and I think they just have to dive in, then learn, then go find a teacher specifically for that specific thing. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I have a reverse sort of take on it. Is don't learn and then try to do it. Just dive in. These tools are meant to be intuitive, and then once you start going, okay, cool, now I'm a little bit familiar, then go find like an instructor or whatever to help you progress in that space. And that's the message towards students.
I had a quick question for you, Neil. And it picks up on one of the questions about sort of the next 5 years and how the metaverse is trending. What do you think are the big sort of thresholds or pivot points that we have to cross for this thing to become more of a mass market phenomenon?
Yeah, good question. So I call this the economics of creativity. It's basically operations. Because right now, when we work with brands, there's an asset library. Now, when we look at this asset library, it's all 2D world. They've evolved to video now. So these asset libraries for brands are all images and videos. And then when it trickles down to all the regional marketing managers, they reuse those assets. So to go into this whole new 3D space, those asset libraries and those core things that, like those brand libraries that every brand has, need to be upgraded and handle 3D assets and work out how they can be easily utilized. And I think we're going to see things like kinetics, and I think Move AI and all these things becoming more relevant, because what I project these brand tools to become. Also, like I think Adobe Character Animator is a pretty cool one as well, where it gets your activates your camera, and then you can activate the virtual character just through Adobe tools. But I think what we're going to start seeing is new tools coming out where we can have these 3D characters and then easily animate them, because animation was quite a taxing task. But now with this whole AI generated animations, where I can go make all these kinds of different movements. I don't have mine on right now, but I use it's called hallway tile. So if you Google hallway tile, I could turn this Zoom call into a completely virtual tool, and the whole setup of it is less than 30 minutes. And then through screen recording or recording systems, I think we're going to start a new way of content creation. So I think there needs to be operational and fundamental brand tool developments to make this a bit more mainstream. I think we're going to see it linger in with creative tech and the tech savvy creatives from now until the next few years, which kind of keeps us in a niche spot as well. I mean, one of the reasons why I think I can get away with, as I started my story off, is like I never really went to university. I just got involved in multimedia, and I started getting these jobs because I was a niche in the market. Digital was not mainstream. Digital was called multimedia back then, and so it was not mainstream. And then I was this niche because I was a person. So I think if you now Metaverse is that new niche. You won't go and do deep etching, which is like cutting out faces or whatever, because AI looks after all of that. And now there's so many, or digital marketing, everyone can be a digital marketer now, or social media marketer. But being able to do these kinds of things with metaverse technology, now that's something new. So how is that done inside gaming? How is it done with virtual characters? So there's a lot of problems to be solved. And I think this is the real opportunity for all the people that are new and niche, and they'll be the architects of tomorrow. So I guess it's hard for me to answer. I know definitely I'm going to be using this to my advantage as someone that is always an early adopter. And I think many of the students here can do the same.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to take it from Michael, because I know Michael usually always asks this. But, it's usually, and you talked about this a little bit, right? About you never went to university, right? You're self-taught. YouTube gave you everything you knew, right? Not a great message for NYU, but at the same time,
yeah.
it's a real message. What skills do the kids, you know, if I'm graduating this year, right? If I'm graduating next year, what skills are you looking for, right? What skills are important when you get a CV, a resume come on your desk? You know, talk a little bit about, can you just, you know, as we wrap up, just some notes for our students, and even faculty that are teaching our students, what they need to focus on to be the marketer or the technologist of the future.
Yeah, it comes down to attitude. You need to be hungry. I mean, they always say this, but it comes down to attitude, but not like a bad attitude, like as in like an attitude that you will do better and do something great. I think one of the things that I personally do is whenever I do a keynote presentation, it's always to be amazing. I'll stay up all night just to kind of get all that level of detail, and that kind of shows that I've taken pride in my work. Or even when I do like my own CV, I always think of it as like, okay, this is what everyone else does. I need to be different, because that's what our role as advertising people and creatives are, is to stand out, is like learn from everybody else and then push the needle further. So the question I would ask is like, okay, what have you done that takes this further? And that's someone that's in my hiring strategy so if they're doing what everyone else is doing, and it's important to know what everyone else is doing. If you're coming to me with, this is what I've done further, but it happens to be something that everyone else does, then I'm not going to find that amazing. But if you found an interesting insight there, then it's like, okay, cool, this person thinks beyond. So there's the hard skills that you're going to be able to learn, the technical skills. But at the same time, there is you need to be self-taught in this space because it moves really fast. And I think this is where the roles of universities really come in, is that you need to be aware of what everything else is out there to know how to take it further. Because if you become self-taught in this area and then it's like what everyone else is doing, then you're not really going to progress. So yeah, I think there's a role of self-learning and faculty learning, and specifically in this space as it's evolved further and further. So taking you to here, and how do you spike up and deliver the value? So yeah, no, that's definitely what I look for, is who is aware of what is happening and how are they moving the needle forward. This applies to people and brands. Like when we look at clients, I wouldn't go work with a client that is not looking to progress forward. It's just a waste of both our times.
Great. Thank you, Neil. That was really, it was really, really good. Michael, I'll let you close.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fabulous, Neil. I was totally fascinated and reminded of how much creativity and innovation is coming out of the Chinese market, you know, and some of the opportunities, as you said, that are created by the unique sort of ecosystem and applications you have, but genuinely just the nature of creativity, which we always say here, you know, is a global phenomenon. It knows no boundaries. It's, you know, there's no such thing as American creativity somehow. We don't have any kind of purchase or claim on that. So it was absolutely delicious to see all these different examples, and really appreciated your analysis of the economics of creativity. I would love to learn more about that. I think that's a very pivotal idea, actually. I think you've probably hit on something quite critical. Anyway, I think we have a little advertorial. We have a book talk coming up later this week. Matthew Sawyer, who's one of our faculty, has written a wonderful book about making it in America. Basically, it's a guide for all those businesses, that started by, say, non-native Americans who want to understand and figure out how to launch a business in the US. It's a very well-researched, very easy to use, an interesting book. And he's going to be in conversation with our interim academic director, Baria Goran, on Friday. So I want to encourage any of you who are interested in that topic to attend, and you can see the QR code. But absolutely, mostly just want to thank our speaker, Neil, and our moderator, Paul, for a really, I think, exciting, fast-paced conversation, which I was hurriedly trying to take notes and screenshots of. So I want to thank you both for that. We will send out a survey after the event and love your feedback. We always are interested in hear your feedback, and this talk will be posted ultimately up on YouTube along with the other talks from the series. So many thanks. Thanks to everyone who stayed up late in New York and got up early in China. So
thank you for having me.
Thank you, Neil.
Thanks.